Hey, YouTubers. So, I think I'm just going to turn this channel into the daily grind, right? So, I mean, always got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I think the best way to do that is maybe just kind of like browsing the local news. You know, a lot of the stuff that we see online is just, most of you probably know. If you're watching my channel, you probably know it's all pretty much BS. And it's always trying to point you in a direction. Sometimes it's legitimate news, right? But I mean, generally, like national news is always just, it's all scare tactic stuff, and it's all separational. I mean, look, you got pictures of Trump here. It's just like blah, right? But okay, we'll click on this one real quick, just because. But there's just so much to talk about, and I don't like doing I really appreciate the psychics out there that do daily readings. Daily readings are pretty good for. The problem is if you're not really resonating, and if your intuition's not really working very well, and you're not in tune with your higher self, then watching daily readings on a YouTube channel isn't going to do you any good anyway, because you're not going to know if it applies to you or not, right? So it's like, I don't know. So the best way I believe that I can get any kind of information out there is to maybe just do this daily grind, and the truth will set you free. And so if you guys can see how I'm looking at this stuff, maybe it can resonate with you and say, well, yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it too, right? And if you don't look at it that way, I'd love to hear in the comments to see what you have to say. Anything you have to say is going to be worth saying. You're just as good as me. You're just as important. So I saw this article here. It's a mind-blowing cosmic discovery massively boosts chances of life outside our galaxy. Okay, so where have we not found life? Is there any place that we haven't found life? And what is life? That's the better question. So, and this is the reason why I just got done writing a book, because everything is alive. Everything looks exactly the same when you look at it. Everything, and I like this picture of a galaxy for this reason. Everything is a field with a structure on the inside in it that we see. We see the structure. We don't see the field. The field's all around us. And, if you're having a hard time believing in that, well, it's just common electrical theory. Sorry, that's just the way it works. Everything's got a field around it. You have a biofield. And then when you look at it, electromagnetic, any kind of electromagnetic camera, it's going to show there's a giant range of electromagnetic spectrum that, depending on what kind of camera you're using, is going to pick up that electromagnetic spectrum. And so there's a giant electromagnetic spectrum out there, and it picks up everything. There's a field, which is the feminine, and then there's a structure, which is the masculine. So all of us have feminine and masculine in our everything has feminine and masculine. And so the more complex the structure, the more energy it's holding. So the field becomes more complex, and so does the structure, because it's moving more information and energy. For example, our little galaxy right here is moving a lot of information and energy, and it's all. The other thing that everything also has is it all comes from and goes back to one point, or heart. So the center of our galaxy here obviously has, 1 point in it. So let's read this thing. Galaxies from early universe. I like that statement. Early universe. Okay. We're buying into the Big Bang Theory, which I don't really buy into. I cover it, in my book, but there is no evidence of a Big Bang. They just assume that because people have this finite view of reality, right? There must be a beginning and an ending. It can't be infinite, but that's just not the way it looks, right? Anyway, a new study flips the entire narrative of how scientists think about the structure formation of the universe, rewriting cosmic evolution theories. A team of international researchers, 10 times more common than previously believed. Many of these galaxies formed some 10 billion years ago or longer, going back far into the history of the universe. Milky Way is a typical disk galaxy. So there are a lot of different galaxies out there, or different types of galaxies. So a disk galaxy obviously is collapsing towards the center of that toroidal field or torus field. All of them are inside of a toroidal field, but some of them are a little scattered. You know, they're not. You're just seeing them in different stages of how they're expanding and collapsing, right? So, and it's a different structure. There's an infinite variety of structures that you could put inside of a torus field. That's why a torus field is so unique. So like if you go look at M51, which is a cluster galaxy, it's just a bunch of spots. It's a really actually cool galaxy to look at if you've got a pretty sensitive scope and it's some dark skies. You got to get into dark skies to really view it, but to view it well anyway. But there's a lot of cluster galaxies out there that aren't like spiral galaxies. And there's other types of galaxies out there that we're just not going to talk about. That's kind of pointless to talk about. It's not the point of this message. But everything's alive. Everything looks exactly the same. And the reason it is alive is because it's always moving. So the definition of not alive or dead would be that it's not moving, right? I mean, that's how we think about whether or not something's alive or dead, is that it stops moving. Well, if it's not moving, it's dead. So what isn't moving? Nothing. Nothing isn't moving. There isn't anything that isn't moving. So everything's alive, right? This theory of, and people say, well, there must be life outside our galaxy, is just kind of a dumb statement. You know, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's, our definition of what we believe alive and dead is just a little bit skewed. So let's just keep reading. Astronomers previously considered these types of galaxies too fragile to exist in the early universe, when galaxy mergers were more common, destroying what was thought to be their delicate shapes. So they're just trying to connect, the shape of a galaxy with life, because in their mind, theoretically, a spiral galaxy is going to have more common to have life-bearing planets like the Earth that are going to have life in them. And so these are the pillars of creation. I love this nebula, the Eagle Nebula. Very cool picture. But, just looking at that, doesn't it seem like... and that's always going to be moving. So a trillion years from now, that won't look the same. It's just a gas cloud that's expanding, contracting, and then those beautiful field stars in the back. It's one thing, listen to your heart space. Whenever I'm talking about this stuff, what does your heart tell you? Does your heart tell you that that's all dead? Because, when you sit out in the stars and you lay at night and you look up, doesn't that tell you that everything around you is alive? It's always going to tell you that, because your heart is connected to every other point in time space that there is, right? Every time you expand outward and look at the bigger picture, it's always coming from and collapsing to one point. Same thing happens when you look inward. Every single cell in your body, if you look at your cells, it's a little bioorganism that's expanding and contracting. It's breathing. And it's coming from and going back to one point. Even atoms. They have, somebody could try and argue that that's not the case with an atom, but an atom is moving so fast because the expanding and contracting cycles are so fast that, it's moving 100 trillion times faster than we are. So we don't have a camera slow enough to actually see the expanding and contracting cycle. And so we actually aren't even seeing the structure. We're just seeing a fuzzy blob that either has a positive or negative charge, depending on how many tendency the cycles are at. For example, if you have a tendency if you are expanding more than contracting, then you're going to have an overall negative charge because you're pulling things towards you. Whereas if you're contracting more over time, you're going to have an overall positive charge because you're expending energy. So you're more of a conductor, right? You're spewing more energy or more information and energy than you are taking it in. So molecules balance themselves that way. The positive and negatives all balance each other that way. And so they create longer change of molecules that have positive or negative charges or have no charge if they're completely balanced. But they're always trying, always trying to find equilibrium. That's one standard in the universe, is everything's trying to get back to neutrality or getting into a state of equilibrium. Hence our spiral galaxy that's collapsing towards the center. So let's go back to our news articles. I think we've covered that enough, right, guys? Bill Gates speaks out on major overlooked contributor to Earth's overheating. Oh no. Why are we overheating? Global heating that may okay. Chemical waste, vehicle pollution. Yeah. Unconfuse me. Bill Gates can just suggest not many people are aware of one of the most significant contributors. So, I'm not going to badmouth Bill Gates. He is, so think of it this way, and all of us are in this state, whether or not you think about this or not. I have a little dog, and she's a cute little dog, and every time someone comes to the door, she barks, bark, 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 bark. Right? Because she doesn't know that person isn't out to get her, but I know that. And so I just console her, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. When our higher selves, our highest self, which is, basically everything, knows the grand design, the big picture. And since we are all connected and we're all one, then technically nothing out there can get you. And so until you realize that, you're always going to be falling back into this lower state or animalistic state. And it's not bad, it's just the evolution of the soul. So try and think of it that way. When you see somebody like this who's trying to scare tactic about pollution and, it's just society's creating waste because it's trying to control one another, right? Anytime you try to control anything, you're going to create waste. So unknowingly, and people are always going to create more and more waste the more control we do. And, money creates control. And so there's so much waste when it comes to, because if your incentive is to make money, you're just going to be making a lot of products for the sake of making money instead of actually providing something that's natural and organic for people. And so it just creates waste. So we have piles and piles of waste. So the planet is in the middle of, we're coming to higher awareness here so that the waste finally can go bye-bye and we all stop trying to control one another. That's kind of the end of the story here with the Gates story. But the reality is they've been trying to sell this, hot cycle thing for a long time. I mean, there's no question that we're getting ready to move through, the field is collapsing. So, they're not talking about that in this article. The field is collapsing, so there's more energy moving through the system. And so it's not necessarily getting hotter, but if the poles are moving, then it's going to be hot in different places and colder in different places because we're going through a field collapse where the poles are going to just show up wherever they need to after we go through the galactic equator. Now, if you haven't watched many of my other videos, you probably might not understand what I'm talking about there, but as soon as we go through the galactic equator, then the field completely collapses and you become just a pure conductor for a very small amount of time. Just, electrical theory. Field expands and collapse. And the field expands and collapses as you move back and forth between positive and negative. That's what a sine wave is doing. There's an equatorial line, in our alternating current, and the path of our galaxy or of our solar system through the galaxy does the same thing. So every half cycle, which is around 13,000 years, we pop into another pole of the galaxy. So that's what's creating the thing we're going to now. We don't, there's a couple of channels and there's a couple of leading scientists that are talking about this that doesn't get put on the mainstream, but they're kind of posting the date that's going to happen in like maybe 10 years or so. So energy, the current is going to keep ramping up as it goes through our system, and so the Schumann resonance is going to keep increasing because frequency has to increase to move more information, more energy. We're becoming more of a conductor. So the field is collapsing, which means that all of us are going to start expending more energy. And if we're not, it's because we're trying to overcome fears. We're not being as creative. Just all kinds of stuff in our systems to overcome that, right? Because fear is like a type of capacitance in your biofield. And so, if any of you are familiar with electricity, as soon as you start cranking the voltage or the current up through a capacitor, eventually it shorts out. So, which is good, because the more energy that moves through the system, the less delusional society will get. This is good, right? So these false narratives just won't continue to last. They've been, if you're any of you as old as I am, they've been trying to sell us on global warming for 40 years. I mean, in 2023, where we're at now, the oceans were supposed to be either dried up or we were going to be in water world. And I don't know if you guys remember water world, in the 90s. Everyone thought that the polar ice caps were going to melt by 2020, and then we were all just going to be floating in ships. But they're actually just slowly. It makes sense that they're just slowly shifting, right? Because the poles are moving. It's no secret. Okay, I'm done talking about that. What else can we talk about? Golf. We could talk about golf. Racers should develop game-changing new glass with 10 times more resistance than what's used today. That's interesting. We could talk about that, but I think the overall message is trust your heart. What's your heart telling you? Because your heart's connected to everything, and the main thing here is, once you understand that you can't separate yourself from anything. Because when you think negatively about something else, then it's going to make you tired. They've done studies where it shows that you're actually pulling photons from that thing, whatever object you're thinking negatively about. And then there's a reverberating effect, and you'll get tired. Same thing you think about if you think negatively about yourself. There's no reason to ever think negatively about yourself, because you are not the temporary projection of what you probably imagine yourself to be. Like, you look at me here, you're like, boy, what a handsome young man, right? But I'm just a projection of how I'm creating myself. I could decide to become fat. I could decide to become extremely fat. I could decide to, do all kinds of things. So all of us are just a temporary projection of how we want to create ourselves. We are creating ourselves in our own image. And what we decide to do today could be different than what we decide to do tomorrow. So what we are isn't the temporary state that we project, or our masculine energy. We are the creator of that thing. And once you understand that everybody is that, and that most people are just living in the delusion that there's some kind of temporary manifestation, then it becomes a lot easier to minister to people if they need help seeing that they're totally fine and whole. So spread that message. That's a good message, right? And not only that, but since everything is a part of you and you're a part of it, how you treat it is how it will treat you. So if you love it, it will love you. If you believe that it will take care of you, it will. The truth will set you free if you really understand that. You don't have to really try and sell yourself. All you have to do is love the people around you unconditionally, because they're just like your puppy dog. A lot of times we get caught in, false delusions, and we think things are attacking us, but they're not. It's just something else that's living in a false delusion. And if you love it and teach it that it's okay, then everything works out. And then you raise the awareness of everyone around you. I I think I'll cut it off there today. I'll probably talk about a different subject tomorrow. I have a project that I've been thinking about. Homeless people are, even when you're homeless and you get caught into that system, it's usually because you're obviously caught in some kind of delusion, and you're not taking care of yourself the way you should be, because you don't realize how powerful and lovely you are. So teaching people that will do a lot to change the direction of things. Eventually, when more and more people start to become more and more creative, then we'll see a big shift happen. But gotta have patience and love each other unconditionally. And so I'll catch you guys on the next one. Ciao.